To live and work on the moon might sound like a dream.
I was strolling on the moon one day in a merry, merry month of December. May.
Or a complete nightmare, depending on who you ask.
The moon is terrible. It's a terrible place to be.
Extremely inhospitable place.
A very dusty environment.
Extreme temperature swings.
It's a lot of radiation.
The moon gets bombarded by meteorites,
microgravity conditions,
solar flares.
So, after more than 50 years,
we're sending humans back to the moon.
One thing that Apollo got a lot of criticism for was the fact that we kind of just went there and left flags and footprints, but we didn't stay.
Today, the vision is to build an architecture that allows a lunar ecosystem to emerge to support continued activity on the moon.
If successful, these endeavors could redefine the boundaries of human life and exploration.
Essentially, we're working to build humanity's home on another world.
We want to deploy our presence and our understanding on the moon because it will just be a springboard to the next.
It will require the highest levels of scientific discovery, technological advancement, and, well, money.
I'm talking about tens and hundreds of billions of dollars.
These investments we make today will have a direct impact on our future space economy.
If we can actually find ways to sustain businesses on the lunar surface, then what's to say we can't find ways to sustain businesses on asteroids, on Mars, other areas of space that we're not even thinking about right now.
It all starts with getting back to the moon.
Something that I like to think about, the first human that ever looked at the moon, at that moment, we were always going. We were always going to seek to have a sustained presence there. We're ready to go back and to stay. We have the technologies that are going to enable us. So it's really just always been a part of what had to happen.
I'm about 2 cycles lower on this chair than when we started, so doesn't matter to me, but I wanted to give you the opportunity.
Please
keep that. I love it.
Don't cut that.
These are the Artemis II astronauts, and they're destined for the moon.
Now we got it.
Well, Artemis in Greek mythology is Apollo's twin sister.
It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
I think our generation appreciates having a program that now we get a chance to take our own moonshots, right? What we call great things that humans accomplish. This is our generation's opportunity to send humans into deep space to explore.
Now, it might seem strange to say the moon, our closest celestial neighbor, is in deep space, but it is wildly far away. It is 1,000 times farther away than the International Space Station, which is in low Earth orbit. So the fact that we were actually able to reach it back in the 60s is quite impressive. Now,
we're coming off a decade of massive and unprecedented venture investment in space.
This is Carissa Bryce Christensen, founder and CEO of Bryce Tech, known for data-driven analysis of the satellite and space industry.
The world of lunar exploration today is a lot more expansive and inclusive, so that certainly introduces some chaos, and it also broadens the opportunity space for new actors, new innovators, new investors, new companies.
As of January 2025, the space economy is worth nearly $600 billion, which is on par with the global semiconductor industry or the entire global sports market. Surprisingly, most of that money has nothing to do with the moon.
The lucrative business of space, the $100 billion markets, are associated with satellites.
Almost everything we consider part of the space industry is directly linked to life on Earth because the tech is designed to serve us humans. Thus far, the moon has been seen as an opportunity for government-funded exploration, not necessarily business. But we know the commercial satellite companies of today wouldn't exist without the technology, innovation, and investment from the space race. Can modern government interest in the moon open the door for commercial companies to thrive and create new business opportunities even further out in our solar system? The overall space economy is projected to be worth $1.8 trillion by 2035. And theoretically, the moon could become a bigger, more commercial slice of that money pie. If the companies pursuing lunar endeavors can master the technology and figure out that one very important thing.
Customers. They need a value proposition that delivers something that people want to pay for.
This is Rio Wujie, Chief Technology Officer of iSpace, a lunar exploration company.
Here at Tsukuba Space Center, we are using the Japan Space Agency's facility to carry out our assembly, integration, and test activity. After that, we are going to once ship to the US to launch our lander to the space. And after that, lander is going to fly to the moon.
That shiny gold piece of tech you see in the background, that's their lunar lander. Well, actually, it's their second.
Japanese company iSpace admits its shot to become the first private company to land a spacecraft on the moon.
A Japanese company is assuming its attempt to put a lander on the moon has failed after losing communication with the vehicle.
At this moment, we have not able to confirm successful landing on the lunar surface.
Which is a nice way of saying it crashed. Prior to 2025, only 5 countries and 1 commercial company had ever landed intact. Now, this year alone, there are 5 commercial missions scheduled to send landers to the moon. As of April, 2 have already reached the lunar surface. Firefly Aerospace was successful. Intuitive Machines landed, just in the wrong orientation. iSpace is set to be next, vying for a reputation as a reliable provider of payload transport to lunar orbit and the lunar surface. Payload transport is one of the most obvious ways to make money in space. Payload is synonymous with passenger or cargo. So, if you've got a vehicle with available space, you can let people pay you to transport their payloads. Payload transport. Whether it's a satellite company buying space on a rocket or a government agency buying space on a lunar lander, anything going into space needs a ride, and a reliably consistent one at that. In the case of the moon, a ride that can land. Landers must arrive with enough fuel to operate large thrusters that slow the spacecraft down for a soft landing, hopefully avoiding the many craters and rocks that speckle the surface.
The most challenging part should be our landing, the operation, because we don't have, the lunar environment. We don't have a field to simulate lunar environment, including gravity and so on. We still have a lot of unknown factor there.
A lot of these problems can only be solved by taking the risk and sending more missions to the moon. Simultaneously, there are some clever solutions being developed to help answer big questions from right here on Earth. To better understand the lunar environment, the European Space Agency, aka ESA, built their own moon inside this little grey building.
So I'm standing here right now on the observation room looking into the Lunar facility. This facility is something that we built here in the last year. Essentially, it's an operational training facility used for testing new technologies, for training astronauts for future missions. But the real key feature about what we've done here is we've basically tried to recreate the lunar surface.
The moon is covered in lunar regolith, a deceptively hostile sand-like substance. It is extremely dusty, electrostatic, so it sticks to everything, and it's razor sharp, presenting all sorts of challenges for humans and equipment. And that's just one of the conditions this facility mimics.
On the one side, we have an offload system for gravity. On the other side, we have the illumination conditions you will face once you do operations on the surface of the moon. We can even freeze part of the soil because it's rather cold there. So you have on 700 square meters the capability to have the conditions you really face at the surface of the moon.
Even still, one could say we've only scratched the surface.
The moon, you can consider it a bit like the 8th continent.
If you took the surface area of the moon and flattened it out into a rectangle, it would be about the size of the continent of Africa.
There have been a dozen of people walking on the moon. The couple of decades ago. Can we say that in a couple of hours, a dozen of people have explored a full continent of the size of Africa? I don't think so.
It'd be the same as us saying, we've been to the beach and now we think we know the ocean. There's so much more of the moon.
The more we learn about the moon, the more effectively we can use it as a proving ground for the capabilities needed to go beyond.
We want to go to Mars. We want to go the next step. And to go to Mars will bring us additional challenges.
These kind of representative environments allow us to get familiar with the challenges of working and training on the moon and getting ready for that exploration that we anticipate in the next decade. I think it becomes important to see how we can actually create an economic case around exploration of the moon. The moon, although it looks like a desert, in fact is loaded with very valuable resources. So there's a lot of metals bound into the regolith, there's a lot of oxygen in the moon. I mean, nearly 40% of the moon is oxygen. So that's very valuable resources.
Where there are resources, there's the potential for in situ resource utilization, or ISRU for short. Essentially, the use of whatever we can find locally on the moon, or any other planet for that matter, to enable our work or life there.
One of the main motivating factors that NASA has used for going back to the moon is the recent discovery of water ice on the surface of the moon. The constituents of water, hydrogen and oxygen, are the main components of rocket fuel.
When you travel to space, right now, you have to carry all of your fuel with you. And fuel is heavy.
Every pound that you launch into space, that adds more dollars, that adds more weight to your rocket. So if we can find resources that we can use on the moon that will save us money.
It could also create ways for people to sell the resources and make money off of the moon.
There are many ideas relating to that, from resource extraction for purposes of fuel or finding unique resources that are valuable on Earth, to one of my favorites, which is the idea of moon rock jewelry.
From there, the business possibilities only get bigger and more expansive.
A thriving lunar economy would mean that there's so much more potential for ways to make money and to explore space that we just haven't dreamed of yet.
Even as we wait for the pieces of a viable lunar economy to fall into place, there are already customers interested in the moon.
Now, almost more than 25 years ago, I had an idea. Then I did the stupidest or the bravest thing I've ever done. My name is Michael Jenberg. I'm an artist. In the broader sense, sometimes they call me an entrepreneur, or I don't know, but I'm an artist, basically.
His current project? To put the very first house on the moon. Sort of.
I'm Swedish, and it is a typical Swedish house, and we're actually sitting in one now. This is from 1758. I was raised in one. My parents was, my grandparents was, and even further back. So I was working with that concept, and I had this idea that the ultimate piece of art would be to put a red house with white corners on the surface of the moon. The interesting thing, I think, is the size here.
So yeah, not a full-scale house.
I mean, this is really insignificant here. I mean, it's really nothing in a sense. But on the moon, it will be totally alone on this enormous, vast void of kind of nothingness. So in my mind, it will be enormous in a sense. Doesn't have any purpose here at all. It only gets a purpose when it reaches the moon.
The Moonhouse belongs on the moon. It's in the name. So in order to get there, Michael and his team purchased a payload spot on the iSpace lunar lander.
When we started 25 years ago, there was no commercial transportation possibilities to the moon. But when we learned that iSpace existed and we understood that they were actually taking payloads, all of a sudden it was tangible.
Neither iSpace nor Michael could reveal the actual cost, so we were left with an analogy instead.
If I would build a really, really nice house here in Sweden with a swimming pool and everything, that would kind of be equivalent to what a house on the moon in this size actually costs.
Though it'll never be lived in, this red house might give us the littlest metaphorical glimpse into what life on the moon might one day be.
So if we envision a future lunar settlement, what does that look like?
We're going to need infrastructure, a lot of it.
So if you take a hard-nosed look at a lunar economy, you could maybe say people are romanticizing a vision of a lunar settlement, a lunar community. But without that vision, without that fundamental deep human push to explore, we would achieve nothing as a species. You need big thinkers, you need visionaries, you need those people who think beyond the feasible in order to achieve anything.
Got it. We need visionaries and big thinkers, and definitely lasers.
Lasers on?
Okay, just a moment. There we go. Okay, so these lasers aren't zooming around like some big sci-fi moment. But what you see happening is the start of how we might actually be able to build structures on the surface of the moon. And if it works, this could open the door for all kinds of activity and business there. This is Project Olympus.
So ICON's Project Olympus is a robotic autonomous construction system specifically for the moon and eventually Mars. Essentially, we're working to build humanity's home on another world.
Based in Austin, Texas, ICON has been innovating in the world of home construction since 2017 and has built nearly 200 homes and structures across the US and Mexico. Their proprietary technology essentially uses a special concrete material and huge 3D printers to build houses, one layer at a time.
So here on Earth, we build with Lava Creek Carbon X. Essentially, bringing even just a small amount of it to the moon could cost a couple $100,000 for essentially a single brick worth of material.
If we do some quick math, that means that building one average-sized home on the moon could cost upwards of $6 billion in bricks alone.
But if there's material there to build with, and you can build a robot to autonomously construct structures with it, then you can save a lot of money. So essentially, you bring just the tools and none of the materials, and you can build what you need to live off the land.
More specifically, their robot will use solar energy and a system of lasers to
scoop, tamp, filter, and compact the regolith. Use the lasers to actually melt.
Remember in situ resource utilization? Voila! The dangerous, dusty lunar regolith becomes a structural ceramic that we can build with. So, assuming we can get this 3D printing robot and its lasers to the lunar surface,
we're able to build things like landing pads, roads, protective structures, eventually habitats.
I think it's essential when we're talking about what space architecture is and should be, that we merge form with function.
This is Melody Yashar, ICON's Vice President of Building Design and Performance. And on a more cosmic note, she's a space architect.
Of course, I think that it's important that space architecture aspires to represent a symbol for humankind's pioneering accomplishments in space, but it also has to solve very fundamental engineering problems of what it means to create a resilient environment in this very, very hostile and extreme landscape.
So what might structures on the moon actually look like?
So this was a concept for a Olympus architecture where we conceived of a torus-shaped habitat, which is what you see here, in various sizes that could house a crew of 4 astronauts for approximately 1 year. We were able to introduce these small pockets that we could introduce loose regolith into. This was a strategy to essentialize the 3D printing to the main structure.
With this plan, builders, or builder robots, could rely on the lunar regolith and its natural properties to create a structure that serves as a radiation shield to protect humans, one of the major engineering challenges for building on the moon.
We need to demonstrate that the technology can print autonomously and construct surface infrastructure autonomously. So there's a long roadmap. I think it's going to be at least another 20 years before we can consider how 3D printing can be incorporated within the design of a pressurized habitat.
So, say the technology is ready for all of this development on the moon within the next 2 decades. It begs the question, what kinds of protections and regulations will be necessary as human activity expands out into deep space? Back in 2020, the US Department of State and NASA launched the Artemis Accords.
The Artemis Accords are a framework. First and above all, a political signal initiated by the United States of America, looking for partners in their endeavor to explore the moon.
The Accords serve as guidelines for peaceful practices and collaboration on the moon. To date, more than 50 countries have signed the agreement. Some key players are partnered in a different initiative, and because of that, this isn't just a question of planetary protection, but maybe national security as well.
Lawmakers within the US have been sounding the alarm in recent years about China's increasing activity in space. China has been launching very frequently and has a very robust space program as well. One concern from lawmakers is that the moon can be considered a military high ground. So if China were to place certain assets in the lunar vicinity, they could potentially have the high ground over assets in low Earth orbit or in geo orbit.
We are back in a situation where we are more in a, let me call, tense world on a geopolitical level. But I'm convinced that if humanity wants to go to the next step, we will have to find each other again. And I hope that the moon will be an opportunity for that.
When I started with this project, I used to look at the moon and I saw the impossibility of it. But during the years, I've been kind of pointing at it and saying, it has to be possible, understanding that it's not possible. And now that it's possible, I go there, I go out and I see the moon and I go like, hey, you know, it's like it's so much more, it's like something intimate.
Curiosity and wonder have always been a driving force in the space industry, and this time is no different. But a lunar ecosystem and economy still have some big unknowns, from proving we can land consistently, to building infrastructure, to finding the resources to keep humans alive. None of this modern moonshot is guaranteed. But for some, it's worth the risk.
This random name is resilience. The resilience means continuously overcoming and working and keep challenging. You know, this is exactly our mentality in this second mission.
We're at the point where we're putting money in order to see results in the future.
I have no crystal ball, and I will not speculate. But what I can tell you is that we do everything to enable this lunar economy to become reality.
At some point, we can tip the scales to having humanity understand we have something in common and a shared interest in surviving, all of us, and that our planet survives as well. We're not going to the moon so we can have an escape path for Earth, but to make our lives on Earth better.